Did you know there's a power juries have that's so important the justice system actually tries to keep it a secret? Seriously, it's this power that lets jurors basically ignore a law and deliver a verdict that, on the face of it, makes zero sense. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that power.
So, let's start with a real head-scratcher. How can a jury possibly find someone not guilty when that person openly admits they did the thing they're accused of? I mean, they stand up in court and say, "Yep, I did it," and the jury comes back with not guilty. How does that even happen? It sounds like the system's broken, right? But what if? What if it's actually the system working exactly as it's supposed to, just in a way we're not told about?
And look, this isn't just some wild hypothetical. It really happens. Back in 2021, 6 activists were on trial for causing criminal damage at Shell's headquarters in London. They got out there and admitted everything. And you know what? The jury still found them not guilty. That verdict just begs the question, what is going on here? And the answer, well, it reveals one of the most powerful and honestly most controversial tools we have in a democracy.
All right, so what is this secret power? Well, it has a name. It's a legal concept that's actually been around for centuries. It's called jury nullification.
Okay, so what is it? Put simply, jury nullification is when a jury decides to, well, nullify a law. They hear all the evidence and they might totally believe the defendant technically broke the law, but they still come back with a not guilty verdict. Why? Because they believe the law itself is unjust, or maybe applying it in this one specific case would just be wrong. In that moment, the jury stops being just a fact finder and becomes the conscience of the community.
And this is where things get really, really weird. It's a total paradox. See, the courts have said over and over again that juries absolutely have the power to do this. Once a jury says not guilty, it's over. Case closed. You can't be tried again for the same crime. But, and this is a huge but, the courts have also ruled that you don't have the right to tell the jury about this power. So it exists, but we're not supposed to talk about it in court. It's like this secret handshake of the justice system.
And don't think for a second this is some new fringe idea. No way. This goes all the way back to the founding of the United States. I mean, the very first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Jay, literally told a jury back in 1794 that they had the right to judge not just the facts, but the law itself. To the founders, the jury was the ultimate firewall, the last line of defense against a government that was going too far.
But here's the thing, like any tool this powerful, its history is complicated. Throughout American history, jury nullification has been a total double-edged sword. It's been used for causes we look back on and celebrate, and for things that are just shameful.
This timeline really shows you both sides of the coin. On the one hand, you've got these incredible moments. Back in 1735, it helped establish freedom of the press in the John Peter Zenger case. In the 1850s, you had juries in the North just flat out refusing to convict people for violating the Fugitive Slave Act. And of course, during Prohibition, juries were constantly acquitting people for breaking alcohol laws they thought were ridiculous. But then, there's the dark side. In the Jim Crow South, all white juries used this exact same power to let murderers of black people and civil rights workers walk free.
And that right there is the whole dilemma, isn't it? The conscience of the community can be an amazing force for justice, or it can be a shield for the absolute worst kind of prejudice. It can be used to protect people helping others escape slavery, or it can be used to let Klansmen who committed murder get away with it. The power itself is neutral. It's a blank check. What matters is who is writing it and why.
So, that brings us to today, and how this idea of nullification pops up in a very specific kind of case we see more and more often. When people damage property, not for personal gain, but as a form of protest.
And this idea of sabotage as a form of protest, it's not new at all. Go back to the early 1900s, and you had labor groups like the IWW, the Wobblies, who openly talked about it. But when they said sabotage, they didn't just mean blowing things up. For them, it was much broader. They defined it as the conscious withdrawal of industrial efficiency. So that could be anything from a simple slowdown on the assembly line to protest crazy long hours, or even disabling a dangerous piece of machinery to protect workers. It was a weapon in their fight for basic safety and fairness.
And if you look across history, you can see this clear pattern emerge. Whenever a significant number of people start resisting a law they think is unjust, you start seeing juries do the same thing. You saw it with the Fugitive Slave Act. It was almost impossible to get a conviction in the North. You saw it during Prohibition, where acquittal rates in some places hit 60%. Then, during the Vietnam War, protesters who burned draft files, they often ended up with hung juries. And now we're seeing it again with climate activists who damage things like pipelines. More and more, they're walking away with acquittals or hung juries.
And, this isn't just happening randomly. Today's protest movements are organized.
You have groups like the Climate Defense Project that give legal support to activists. They help them craft a defense that's really smart. They can't stand up in court and say, "Hey, jury, you should nullify this law." That's not allowed. Instead, they focus the entire case on the moral reasons for the action, hoping that those reasons will speak directly to the jury's conscience and lead them to the same conclusion.
Okay, so if this power is so historic and so fundamental, why is it such a big secret? Why do judges in the legal system work so hard to keep jurors in the dark about it?
Well, this quote from a big 1972 case really gets to the heart of it. The courts are afraid that if you tell juries they can just ignore the law, it would lead to total chaos. They literally called it jury anarchy. The fear is that the whole legal structure, the rule of law itself, would just crumble.
So the official reasons for not telling juries, they basically boil down to this. First, judges worry that verdicts would become totally unpredictable, based on who the jury likes more, not on the actual evidence. They're also concerned it would cause way more hung juries, grinding the system to a halt. And, at a really basic level, they argue that jurors take an oath to follow the law as the judge explains it. The courtroom, in their view, is for facts, not for a philosophical debate about whether a law is good or bad.
And make no mistake, the system doesn't just passively hope you don't find out. It actively works to stop people from spreading the word. For years, you've had groups like the Fully Informed Jury Association, or FIJA, handing out pamphlets about nullification on courthouse steps. And for doing that, some of them have actually been arrested for things like jury tampering. That's how seriously the system takes keeping this power under wraps.
Which brings us to the big question at the heart of all of this. Is jury nullification a bug or a feature? Is it a dangerous flaw in the system that could lead to anarchy? Or is it a critical, built-in component designed as the ultimate protection for our freedom?
You know, the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia had a really powerful way of putting it. He said the jury trial isn't just some technicality. He saw it as a fundamental power kept by the people. He argued that it's meant to be our final check on the courts, in the same way that voting is our final check on Congress and the president.
So if you look at it that way, nullification isn't a bug at all. It's the system's emergency brake. It's a safety valve. It's that last-ditch defense for when the government tries to enforce a law that the community itself believes is flat-out wrong or unjust. It's the mechanism that's supposed to ensure that, at the end of the day, the law serves the people, and not the other way around.
And that leaves us with one final big question to chew on. Is the jury box really all that different from the ballot box? If our whole system of democracy is built on the idea that the people get the final say, does that power just magically disappear when you walk through the courthouse doors? It's a huge question about where the ultimate power in our society really lies. And it's definitely something to think about the next time you hear about a verdict that just makes you scratch your head.